First, she says that I have not shown documentation. I have linked you to detailed explanations of which federal agencies require animal tests and what tests they require. Additionally, animal testing is typically required by agencies like the FDA de facto, as they ask for drug toxicity tests from at least 2 species of animals when deciding to approve a new pharmaceutical. This makes animals the obvious choice, and even if it is not a law passed by Congress, it is still a requirement to get your product on the market. The EPA and others require animal testing as well. She says my definition of testing that requires the use of animals is not topical because she has to defend color additives good. I mean, no, there's lots of things you can defend. You can defend medicine good. You can defend pesticides good. You can defend that it's more beneficial than detrimental. I could go on. The point is that I'm not causing you ground loss. Next. She wants us to define testing that requires the use of animals as any form of animal testing. Personally, I think you should prefer my definition because only federal organizations actually require the use of animals in tests. Other agencies can choose the methods they prefer, but if you want to go with her definition, my plan still solves. I was just trying to be as detailed and as topical as possible to set up a good debate and not force my opponent into a position where she has to broadly defend all animal testing. Next. She says I failed to define what animal means. I told you to define this contextually. Let's take it back to high school bio. It's a sentient being with a basic nervous system. Cells and organ systems are not animals because they do not themselves have a central nervous system and are not sentient. Next. On her counterplan, I'm actually going to combine the critical discourse on human testing that was at the end of her speech here, so flow both of these. My opponent argues that I'm basically being racist and classist because I suggest that humans can elect to be tested on. First of all, this wasn't a suggestion. It's just what's happening in the status quo. My argument is that it's more ethical than animal testing because humans can give their consent and elect to stop the testing at any time. Please recognize that with this critical discourse, my opponent has invalidated her own counterplan. She criticizes me as a racist for merely pointing out that this is more ethical than animal testing, but her counterplan actually says that we can only test medical advancements for humans on humans. The humans in her paradigm are going to be the same ethnic minorities that she makes in her own claim. You need to drop her on your ballot right here because her counterplan invests her directly into the classist and racist structure she is purportedly against. Her counterplan does not solve for animal pain and suffering, but it actually increases it across animal species. Honestly, it's just not viable. It will be expensive to test every species of animal to further medical advancements. Or the alternative is that we help some species medically more than others. Both are bad. Also, there is no actor in her counterplan, which limits me out of any stock issues arguments I can make, and vagueness is bad for debate. On case. On my suffering and death point, she says sacrifice has to be made for the greatest good and that it is justified when it saves more lives than it harms, but she didn't provide any statistics on actual lives saved, so drop this. Additionally, the argument is super anthropocentric. Anthropocentrism is evaluating reality and human values while devaluing the lives of beings commonly considered lesser like animals. The human-centered paradigm is a threat to our ecological survival because, just as my opponent demonstrates, it enables us to dismiss animals as others and to eradicate these life forms and ecological systems. On the ineffectiveness of animal testing, she says her counterplan solves for this, but it is not worth it to allow her racist and classist counterplan, which would allow a world where we test on the disenfranchised. On my alternatives point, she says alternatives are worse because they're not living. She cites no source for this. It's entirely conjecture, so toss it. She also states that alternatives are merely a preliminary step before animal testing. Again, there's no source here, and it's just fundamentally untrue, so toss it and vote for the proposition.